sure. And thank you, Adam, for having me. So I've spent the past decade working across the institutional banking and investment space, the last 4 years at the world's largest green bank, the CEFC. So my background and experience is very much in finance, but there's a heavy sustainability overlay just given the purpose-led nature of the CEFC and I guess personal value alignment as well.
Fantastic. So that's crazy. I didn't realize the CFC's, do you say the world's biggest? Really?
Yeah, so we're the world's largest green bank, which is amazing.
I actually had no idea. That's such a big deal. And what are the overall overarching goals of the CEFC?
Sure. So we were established by the federal government back in 2012, and we have the goal of accelerating Australia's transition to net zero emissions by 2050. So obviously a very important goal. And as the emissions challenge is an economy-wide issue, we have a cross-sectorial focus, which means we cover everything from energy generation and decarbonising the grid, all the way through to the energy demand side, which obviously property is a key component. Over the past decade, we've made commitments of over $10 billion, and a bit over $2 billion of that is invested in the property space, and it's roughly split 50-50 between debt and equity, as we have that flexibility to, I guess, invest across the whole capital stack.
Gotcha. Moving on to embodied carbon. So you mentioned a lot about energy and technology and decarbonisation, things like that. So recently you've started looking at embodied carbon. Can you tell us what your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. So I guess we've seen the property sector make huge strides in addressing the operating emissions challenge for new buildings. So as operating emissions are continuing to be addressed, embodied carbon is obviously becoming a much bigger piece of the built environment's emissions profile. The embodied carbon emissions of materials used in Australia total something like 30 to 50 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent per year. And that's about 5 to 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a huge contributor to emissions across our economy. And with over half the buildings that will be standing in 2050 yet to be constructed, it's really essential that we address the embodied carbon of building materials. And I guess we know that industrial processes can be very high in emissions and difficult to decarbonise, particularly, I guess, like steel and glass come to mind. And we're looking to support the decarbonisation of these industries from multiple angles, including through the CEFC's focus on resources and manufacturing, but also through influencing significant property construction on the demand side. Concrete is probably the most advanced in terms of having commercially viable solutions available in the market across various suppliers. And we've supported a few projects in that space. So the Roe Highway Logistics Park in WA uses Boral's Envisia product, and we also have a project down south, Northcote Place in Victoria, which is the development of 74 townhomes, and they're using Wholesome's EcoPact product. And as we know, mass timber can obviously play a significant role here as it presents a readily available and proven technology that addresses embodied carbon where the application suits. So the CEFC is very keen to support the decarbonisation of materials across the economy and help grow demand for low embodied carbon materials, using our finance to help address the challenge.
All right. So, something that caused a bit of a thrill last year was the mass timber program. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why it was deployed and what is it?
Yeah, sure. So the idea was born out of a report we published titled Australian Buildings and Infrastructure: Opportunities for Cutting Embodied Carbon. And that was developed by Edge Environment for the CEFC in collaboration with the Green Building Council of Australia and the Infrastructure Sustainability Council. And we thought the topic was very relevant given the significant expected shift in the breakdown between operational emissions and embodied carbon emissions that I spoke to before. And we wanted to help quantify the challenge of cutting embodied carbon, as well as identifying solutions and opportunities that it could create. So the report is full of great analysis and insights. I highly recommend the listeners check it out. But a key finding was that the use of timber can reduce embodied carbon by up to 75% in certain use cases, and that's compared to the use of conventional steel and concrete. So on the back of these findings, we then launched our $300 million timber building program last year. The program aims to accelerate the use of mass timber construction in Australia with the provision of tailored debt finance to eligible projects. And I guess in addition to driving that kind of direct demand for mass timber products. The program also hopes to help develop local skills and experience, supply chains and delivery capabilities. So all of those indirect impacts we're hoping will also catalyse even greater adoption of low emissions timber-based construction. And pleasingly, our first investment under the program has been made. So we're supporting a 15-storey office tower in Collingwood at 36 Wellington Street. That's been developed by Hines and will be one of Melbourne's tallest hybrid mass timber buildings, cutting embodied carbon levels by about 40% during construction. And it's also targeting net zero in operation. So it's really great to see the program come to light with such an impressive project.
Yeah, 100%. So debt financing, can you tell us a little bit about like what's the money for? Is it like, just is it lending it out and at a lower interest rate, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, sure. So I guess when we think about decarbonising the built environment, it really does require an integrated whole of building approach rather than kind of focusing on one element of a building. So we provide funding on a whole of project basis, which is kind of the typical way that other commercial investors would approach it as well. Under the timber building program, we look at project finance or lending at the corporate level. It's really based on the best fit for the project and the borrower, and with the goal of supporting projects that have a material impact on upfront emissions through the use of mass timber. We also have some really helpful information on the timber building program on our website that kind of goes through eligibility guidelines and a bit more of the specifics about the program. So recommend checking that out as well.
Awesome. So does this, correct me if I'm wrong, a bit of the pain point, because I did hear a few years ago in mass timber that it was a bit harder to find money for borrowing because there's something new and innovative, and that gap is what you're filling here is that, you're going to be able to allow this new technology and really resolve that pain point. Is that correct?
Yeah, precisely. That's what we're here to do. And if we can partner with other financiers, bringing in third-party capital, that's really the cherry on top. So that previous project I was talking about in Collingwood was invested alongside another financier. So it's great to kind of bring private capital along for the journey in support of these buildings and these materials.
Gotcha. So you're teaming up with private capital where required to sort of get things across the line. Brilliant. Well, there's 300 mil just sitting there. Everyone's licking their lips. There's a lot of money. How do they go out there and get their hands on it?
Well, we operate as a bespoke financier. So every transaction we look at, it's really on a case-by-case basis. It's very tailored for an individual project. And as we're a purpose-led organisation, all our conversations really start off at the point of impact. We really want to engage early because it's critical to ensure that kind of alignment. So like-minded sponsors that see a role for timber and want to partner with an aligned party should definitely get in touch. If anyone has a project using timber to materially drive down emissions, the first step is to email me a project summary and we'll get in touch from there.
Right. So, and you may have already answered this, Christina, but so we're speaking about projects. Is there any mechanism for lending in terms of like manufacturing capabilities or anyone looking to really build infrastructure to enable projects, or is it all just at the project level? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for the timber building program specifically, we are looking to support the construction side, so projects that are using mass timber, but certainly across the CEFC, we are looking to support both the supply and the demand side. So if anyone has any projects kind of across the spectrum that are helping the industry, definitely get in touch.
Thanks, Christine. That's great. So say if someone is a developer and they're looking to borrow money, just more generally, like why, what makes a good, puts them in a good position to be able to borrow money, whether it's through yourselves or through private capital as well?
So I suppose lending typically looks at things like the project itself, so understanding the product, where the planning approvals are up to, the project timeline, having a good understanding of the feasibility analysis or having a financial model available. Any valuations are obviously key. Understanding the project structure in relation to sources of debt and equity, the proposed builder and contract type are really important. Understanding the key consultants and advisors, particularly for something like mass timber, which is a bit new in the market. Any leasing and sales strategies, all of that information, kind of all financiers would be looking to understand. From our side, obviously, we want to know a lot about the sustainability, and we want that early engagement to help shape up the project.
Gotcha. That's a great 101. Pulling ourselves up as we're getting towards the end now, Christina, what do you see as the future of sustainability in construction as we're moving forward?
Sure. So I guess if we look at what we need to do for Australia to hit our decarbonisation aspirations, we know for property, we can't just focus on operational emissions. We need to address the decarbonisation of construction and materials. Pleasingly, we're already seeing such pathways forming up. I think of the GBCA's Green Star rating tool, which now factors in upfront emissions and has a transition process to progressively stretch buildings to achieve greater embodied carbon standards. We're also seeing state governments and some local councils requiring the measurement of upfront carbon for residential and non-resi developments. And there's also an important role for technology. We're seeing some really interesting prop tech opportunities through our VC and impact capital arms, which is great to see. And I think moving forward, we'll see more and more capital aligned to purpose. We're already seeing that shift start to happen over the past few years, and there'll be more investment available in support of tangible, sustainable outcomes. So on that basis, I'm quite positive and optimistic about the path forward.
Fantastic. If people want to find out more about yourself or the CEFC or the Mass Timber program, where should they go?
So all the information about the CEFC and the Mass Timber program is at cefc.com.au. And my email address, if anyone wants to get in contact about any potential opportunities, is christina.wijeratne@cefc.com.au.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's been great chatting.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. It's been a pleasure.